I'm Mike,
And I'm Amber. Welcome to the Covenant Chronicles,
where we tell you the truth about relationships,
giving you the tools to build the foundation you always needed. Welcome back to the Covenant Chronicles.
Hello.
Hello. Well, tonight we are going to talk about love languages.
Yeah, I think this is a good one to cover, and it's been on our list for a while, and I think it's something that we really should talk about because it's come up a couple times recently for us, and not really between us per se, but, with others. A couple different folks have, talked about it in different capacities recently. I believe that this is a good one for us to really give our take on it and, give some people to think about, right? Or give people something to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a good place to start is just explaining what the love languages are.
Yep.
And, these were made common. You're basically your 5 love languages. They were made commonly known by Gary Chapman, who wrote a book called, The 5 Love Languages, The Secret to Love That Lasts. It's a great book. If you haven't read it, it's definitely worth a read. And in this book, he basically breaks down what these 5 love languages are, which are acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, words of affirmation, and physical touch. If you've never heard about these before, this is your first time hearing about them, this would be a good time to pause the podcast, write these down, right?
I feel like you'd have to live under a rock, but
Possibly. But, some people are just starting their relationship journey, right? And so these 5 are acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, words of affirmation, physical touch. Just to repeat them so you have them. You want to write them down, save them, whatever. So they each break down in their own way, right? If you read the book, you'll see the descriptions. Acts of service, is basically you doing things to express your affection, right? So things that you believe would make your partner's life easier, things that you believe would bring them joy, that sort of stuff, with the heart posture of, I want to show affection. I believe in a lot of ways you do this, right? There's some things that you do for me frequently that is like your acts of service, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a way that you commonly show affection towards me. Receiving gifts, right? This is, or gift giving, right? Because keep in mind, all of these love languages are a two-way street in the sense that they can be given or received, right? So it specifically says gift or receiving gifts, but it can also be gift giving, right? This is where you are using something tangible that you are giving or receiving to basically show affection, right? So this would be like when you randomly buy your wife flowers, or you buy her jewelry randomly, or sometimes I've seen where like women will do this, if they know that their husband likes cowboy boots or hoodies or hats or whatever, they'll frequently buy him these things, or fishing gear or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So receiving gifts or giving gifts can go 2 ways. Quality time, I mean, that's exactly, what it sounds like, pretty self-explanatory. It's spending quality time together, right? This is the time that you're not sitting on the couch with the TV on, where you both are actively on your phones at the same time, zoning out to the world, right? The quality time is like your date night, or having conversations on a car ride,
Taking a shower together.
right, taking a shower together, well, that can also be the physical touch, right? Depending on how that shower goes. But
True, but
the conversations before bed, just laying in bed having a conversation, these are examples. I mean, it can also be adventures, hikes, walks through the woods, whatever hobbies you have. These all fall under quality time, right? When you're doing them with your spouse. And this is another way that you can potentially give affection or receive affection. Words of affirmation. This is, the I love you. That's one of it, or part of it, but it can also be many other things, right? Telling your wife she's beautiful, telling her she's an incredible mom, things like that, or vice versa. When your wife tells you that she loves these things about you, or loves that you provide for her, whatever it may be, right? These are the words of affirmation. It's another way to show or receive affection. And the last one on the list is physical touch, right? Which is pretty self-explanatory. Doesn't always mean sex. It could be kissing, hugging, holding hands, cuddling, any of these physical touch, right? Slap on the butt, like that can all be basically put into this physical touch category of how you either give or receive affection, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's important to know these, right? And I believe that it's important not only to know them, but to understand where you fall and where your partner falls, right?
Yeah.
Because if you understand the way that you receive affection and love, and the way that you give and receive, or give affection and love, as well as how your partner receives and gives affection and love, it can be a crucial point in actually feeling loved inside of the relationship, right? Because
Hold on. Take pause. I think this is an important distinguish thing that needs to be said, is that oftentimes what you like receiving is not what you give.
Mhm.
You often give differently than you receive.
Right. Well, and that's where I was, going next, is that it can be a crucial thing inside of the relationship because it's often misunderstood, right? Where people will say, oh, they don't show me love anymore. Well, a lot of times they're just not showing it in the way that want to receive it, right? Or the way that you can actually receive it. And the same thing with giving, right? Is if you're giving affection or love in a way that your partner can't receive it, or doesn't receive it, it can feel like you're just throwing things at a wall, hoping something will stick, and nothing does.
Yeah.
Right. And it can be really challenging to navigate this inside of a relationship. But I really want to, I want to dive into this deeper and also get your opinion on it. But before we do that, I want to bring up probably the most important factor about love languages that to date, I've never heard anyone talk about, but I would say that we both agree we have seen over and over and over inside of relationships, and all the evidence in the world is there to provide that and validate what I'm about to say. And that is that love languages change based on the current state of the relationship and your current emotional and emotional and nervous system state.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
And I don't feel that this is talked about enough. And where you will typically see this, or the most obvious blaring case that we see this, right? You've experienced it. I've experienced it in previous relationships. We've seen it in other relationships, is the physical touch one, right?
Yeah.
A lot of women who actually do receive love through and affection through physical touch, when their nervous system is out of whack, will fall out of that category,
Mm-hmm.
and physical touch will no longer be one of their love languages, and even repulse them in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Right? And this is prevalent for men too, right? Because there are certain states. One of my favorite ways to receive, a love and affection from you, obviously, is physical touch, right? And here's the thing. I think this is vastly misunderstood, because this isn't most men out there have a level, and I would say most men are high in the physical touch category, right?
Yeah.
Because we, in many cases, receive the validation in the relationship that we're loved through physical touch, which is also why when there's a lack of sex, it can be such a problem for us,
Yeah.
right? And this is the one I think that is massively overlooked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is the physical touch one, and the fact that it can be such a problem inside of a relationship, because it's the one that men really receive, and women do too. But when he's not stepping up, her nervous system's out of whack, it falls away for her. He's not receiving it in that manner, right? Because now she's showing up in a different manner. So now you have this situation where he's trying to give in the way that he wants to receive, and she's not receiving, and vice versa,
Yeah.
right? But there's other examples of this, right?
Ooh, that just triggered a thought in my brain that I needed to pop out real fast. A lot of times, the love language that we give
Mm-hmm.
is what we want to receive.
Yes.
And that is like super overlooked by people,
Mm-hmm.
which is why like there's often times that, if you don't understand love languages and like your wife is heavily giving, I don't know, let's say acts of service, but that's not really something that you care about.
Mm-hmm.
It can feel like she's not giving you love, but
Mm-hmm.
that's what she's wanting. Like she's wanting you to step up and give acts of service as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the thing is when you understand these things, right? You can perceive, when you understand how your partner actually is showing you love, and the current state of their nervous system, the current state of their emotional, state, I guess would be the best way to put that. And you can understand how they're showing up. You can actually start receiving love in ways that you didn't before, right?
Yeah.
I would say that my top ones, or what I perceived were the top ones, were physical touch and words of affirmation,
Mm-hmm.
right? But since we've been together, I would almost say that shifted to words of affirmation and acts of service,
Mm-hmm.
right? For you, it's different, right? When your nervous system was all out of whack, right, before we got together, you didn't want to be touched.
I hated physical touch.
Right. But now it's your favorite thing in the world.
Yeah.
Right. And so what's interesting about that is I think this portrays the shift, right? And I would be willing to bet if we talked about it more, some of the shifts that you've seen as well, where other things have shifted, because typically people have two primary ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's the most common thing, is two primary ones. There's also other things and other parts to this where you can, when you start really understanding this, and the closer your connection is, you can start receiving things that aren't your normal.
Yeah.
Right. I would say for me personally, there is still always one. Like, receiving gifts is not like one of mine. Right.
Yeah.
I'm of that like mindset, like, birthdays, Christmas, let's spend time doing something. I don't care if anybody gets me anything.
I have to force you to celebrate.
Right. I'd be perfectly happy, on my birthday, just getting to hang out, with you and the kids and playing a board game, right? Like, I'd be perfectly fine with that. So, but what I will say is, for me personally, right? Physical touch used to be my primary one. And I would say, words of affirmation closely followed that, right?
Yeah.
Actually, I take that back. In my previous relationship, physical touch and quality time. But now I would say quality time. And while we don't always, follow the leisure activities in the way that we should, according to the, relationship assessment we did on ourselves. But we do have a good amount of quality time that is just ingrained in our relationship, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, that is built up as the norm,
Yeah.
right? And not to say I don't notice when things change, right? But like, for me, I know that, like, the most common ways I receive now are acts of service and words of affirmation, right? Both of which you pour out of you on a regular basis, right? And I think in a lot of ways that's because I've retrained myself to see the love that comes out of you, right?
Yeah.
And it seems silly, like, when you think about it, right? But when you see these things, it's like making my dinner plate, right? I've never asked you to do that. You've just always done it 99% of the time, right? We have this joke, like, when you start telling me to make my own plate, you're usually mad at me for some reason, right? And I gotta, okay, now we got, review why. And
I wasn't mad at you tonight. I just
no,
didn't know how
yeah,
you wanted
yeah.
yours.
I don't worry about it until about the third day. About the third day, I'm having to make my own dinner plate. I know there's an issue, right? And it's funny because, like, I can make my own plate, right? It's not like I'm incapable, but it's something that you've always done, and I can see the love that comes out of you, basically serving me, right? And so I've learned to appreciate that, and every time you do, right, it's just that little thing, right? And it's those little things that you continue to do, because there's many more things that you do all the time, right? And so when we have these conversations and I'll randomly text you, hey, I just want you to know I really appreciate you, right? It's these things that I think about that trigger these thoughts.
Yeah.
From the woman's perspective, how have you seen your love languages shift and those mold from, previous relationship to our relationship, and then even the difference between beginning of our relationship to now?
Yeah. I would say most of my life, never received physical touch or would have even considered it as a love language to me. Like, it was pretty much like I didn't want to be touched by anyone ever. Like, didn't really enjoy like hugs from family. When I had kids and they were really little, like, the constant like wanting to be on me type of thing, like, really overwhelmed me a lot. And I did not enjoy it with my ex. Like, it was not my thing. It was his though. And so that was kind of an issue in our relationship, because that is how he received love, and I was not good at giving it because I did not enjoy it, right? And I didn't realize or really learn until towards the end of our relationship that I was just super overstimulated and my nervous system was super out of whack. And when I started learning how to regulate my own nervous system, that started to shift. And, my like first relationship after my ex, really, I learned like, oh, hey, maybe I do enjoy physical touch. And then with you, it's been like, you definitely know. Like
Yeah.
that's my thing. But I would say even from like the beginning of our relationship to now, like I think we talked about that being a thing for me in the beginning, but like we had physical touch in our relationship, but I wouldn't say that it was as much as it is now. And times that we've been going through stuff in our relationship, we'll see that die out a little bit, and like I don't really necessarily want to be touched as much during that time. And like I pull away from touching you more. So I think that is like a good point to make is that depending on, things that are happening in your relationship and your nervous system regulation at that time, physical touch is probably going to be the main one that kind of comes and goes, especially for women. Um, Probably more so than men. I'm sure it happens with men too, but
Mm-hmm.
more so for women. And I think that's important for men to understand too, because I know like a lot of men get really frustrated by that. Well, I just want, her to touch me, or I just want sex, or, whatever it is pertaining to physical touch, but not understanding that like, hey, is your relationship good right now? Like, is her nervous system regulated right now? Uh, are you taking those things into account when you're wanting that physical touch? And I know that can be hard because, like, if that's what you're wanting, you just expect to receive it. But I think what you said about like learning to adapt is also kind of important. Like, if there is a lot of turbulence in your relationship or her nervous system is super out of whack right now, like you might have to reevaluate like how is she showing me love and try to like really pour into that. But needless to say, um I always considered mine to be acts of service and quality time.
Yeah.
I would have never said touch before. Um But I also feel like I probably give more acts of service, but I always wanted more quality time, if that makes sense, at least previously. Uh, in our relationship with us, I would say that I probably have three main ones, which are acts of service, quality time, and physical touch. And I would say that I probably equally give them and receive them.
Yeah.
So but I also think part of that is that we've talked about it, you know? It's been a discussion that we've had in our relationship since the beginning, and I think just knowing and understanding, like, what your partner's love languages are, and then trying to implement and adapt that into your relationship can also make a huge difference because I know that words of affirmation are big for you. And while it's not something that I necessarily, like, need, I enjoy it, but it's not, like, one of my top ones, but
Mm-hmm.
I know it is for you, so I try to, like, routinely give that.
Mm-hmm.
Acts of service is just, like, a natural thing for me, so, like, that's just what I do, but I would say knowing that words of affirmation are big for you is something that I've, like, trained myself like to give more frequently because I know it's a big thing for you.
Right. Well, and that's where, like I said, I think this is an important one that really, everybody needs to understand and everybody needs to know about, and not only know about it, but also be able to identify within themselves of what they receive and what they give, as well as how their partner operates, because it truly is a game changer inside of the relationship, right? In understanding how uh, this exchange of affection and love occurs inside of your relationship, right? But like I said, also just simply understanding that you a lot of times give in the way that you want to receive. And if you're not having these conversations with your partner, if you're not understanding this with your partner, you will feel hugely disconnected,
Yeah.
right? And you will continue to grow more and more frustrated. Both of you will, just trying to feel loved or appreciated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all the while, then when these frustrations boil over and they come out, then you find out that your partner's been doing this all along, right?
Yeah.
Or they get defensive because, well, they thought they were doing it. Turns out they're not,
Yeah.
right? But like I said, the biggest, I guess, caveat that I wanted to really impress here or explain is that they do shift and they do change, right? And so this is a great way to honestly navigate with your partner and learn to understand them. And, we repeatedly talk about, relationships. There's almost like this, I would say 6 month to a year cycle, right? Unless you're sitting stagnant, right? Which should not be the case. You should never be sitting stagnant in your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
That becomes the challenge or the biggest thing that will hinder you from getting to where you need to go in life is by being stagnant. And this is very different than being still in the way that you're commanded to in the Bible, right? Because the being still has to do with not freaking out, not going into survival mode, and just continuing to step forward
Mm-hmm.
while listening for what he has for you. But that said, if you're not sitting stagnant and you're stepping forward in your life, and especially in your spiritual journey, right? Or your relational journey or your career journey, in all these journeys, there will be different seasons that will shift these love languages for you into what you give the most and what you receive the most, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when these things shift, if you can see that and understand that, you can actually find ways to connect with your partner in a much better way, right? Or you're going to let it lead to disconnection, right? Because like we talk about, everything that occurs inside of the relationship is an opportunity for connection or an opportunity for disconnection,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I would say, like, we've had periods of growth that have happened so rapidly that we're completely different people within 6 months, right? But you should be auditing your relationship. And what I mean is, if you want to use a tool like our relationship audit tool or other various tools out there, great, do that, every 6 months to a year. But just purely looking at some of the baselines inside of your relationship every 6 months to a year is crucial.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of those places in which I would say these things will shift with those seasons of life. And you need to, if you care about your relationship and you want to continue to build connection, it is something that you're going to have to monitor,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's something that you're going to have to understand, and that you're going to have to realize that, as with anything else in life, you have to continue to put effort in, right? Your
Yeah.
relationship is another area. It's like going to the gym, right? If you're going to the gym, you're eating healthy and you're doing all the things, it takes time, but you get in shape. Same thing with your relationship. If you're doing all the things, your relationship will get in shape. But when you take your foot off the pedal and you start slacking, you start eating those junk foods again. And now, instead of going to the gym 5 times a week, now you're going 1 to 2 times a week, right? What happens? You fall out of shape, right? And your relationship operates very much in the same way.
Yeah.
And in the interest of building connection with your partner, which at the base level of your relationship is what it's all about, right? These are quite literally the manners or the mediums in which you are exchanging currency, and the currency is affection and love inside of your relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
So think of it like transferring money across a bank account, right? Or
Yeah.
you're going to do a wire transfer, you're going to do an ACH, you're going to pay with your credit card, right? That's what these are. And understanding how they come out and the different ways that they get received is critical.
I think just understanding them and like knowing what yours is and how to communicate that with your partner is super important, because I'm sure it's the same for you, but there was so many years that I struggled with my love languages because I didn't know how to properly communicate what I actually needed,
Mhm.
and I was not receiving it. And so, our relationship just struggled from that because, he was needing something, but I was needing something, and we were not communicating about what that was.
Mhm.
And it, it just caused a lot of disconnection in our relationship because of it. But like I said earlier, like you and I communicate about it a lot,
Right.
and we know what each other's is, and we also know how to communicate with each other about it. So if there are times where we're, maybe just busy or disconnected for whatever reason a little bit, or whatever the case is, I also know that I can text you and be like, "Hey, I really need some quality time with you," or "I
Mhm.
really just need some cuddles on the couch," that physical touch. Like,
Mhm.
I'm just really needing this right now. And you're receptive to it and understand and know, like,
Mhm.
I'm just, you know, needing a little bit extra of that right now.
Yeah, and I think that that is the goal that everybody should attain to reach, is, or should strive to reach, I, is just the point in which you can communicate those things, right? And say,
Mhm.
hey, you know, I need to refill my cup. This is what I need, right? And along the journey, just understanding, like you said, just understanding how you give and receive, because the flip side to this is not just the disconnection that occurs from not understanding these things, but we've talked about, like, one way that you actually do receive love, right, is gift giving, or gift receiving gifts, right?
Mhm.
But that is a rare thing for me, and it came from 15 years of that was a way that I gave and it wasn't received,
Mhm.
right? And so, and this is the challenge, right? Because I don't want to say, hey, am I carrying old baggage into a new relationship? No. Do I feel like I've, there's these, how would you say it? I don't like the T word, because that's a silly label that people overuse. Are there is there baggage that has come over from that? I would say no. But it did naturally program me now to where, like, I don't think about it often, right?
Mhm.
There are times where I do think of you, you know, um And there's been times, like every once in a while, I'll bring you a coffee stand drink, or, every once in a while I will, we're stopping at the gas station, I'm doing something inside, grabbing a drink or something, and I will grab you, they have the little single roses next to the counter, and I'll do that, right? Um, but like you've expressed, hey, I do actually like these things, and they don't have to be expensive gifts, right? That's the other thing about this is I think people will misconstrue the gifting part, receiving or giving as, oh, well, it's got to be expensive. It doesn't. It's just the thought, right? Like
Yeah.
it's the thought behind it that says you were thinking of your partner, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we have talked about that, and I have seasons where I'm a little better about it than others, but at the end of the day, right? Like I just naturally just don't think about it because for 15 years, right? That was one of the ways that I showed affection and it wasn't received,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when you understand these things inside of your relationship and you can actually take these things and realize that you may be sending something or you may be trying to receive something and there's a disconnection there, right? You can alter the outcome of your relationship,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it goes back to a lot of what we've talked about before with the mindset and understanding the mindset behind things and having a curious mindset about your partner, not this mindset of, well, I'm doing this and I don't feel they love me. It could be that there is underlying root causes inside of the relationship that really need to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely could be. But more often than not, it's just a disconnect. I mean, more often than not, when it comes to the way you receive or give affection, it's a disconnection of not understanding, what your partner receives or what they give,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. Oh, and I think it's also important to understand that, like, to some level, everyone operates on all five love languages.
Uh-huh.
It's just like which ones really fill your cup and which ones can you like live without, but if it happens, it'd be cool type
Mm-hmm.
of thing. Um, and just understanding like what your main ones are. Because, like, you mentioned, like, gift giving with me, and that did used to be like a big one for me, but it's kind of now like I enjoy it. And like when you do it, I'm like, hey, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. But it's not one that I like strive or need like super often
Mm-hmm.
anymore. You know, same thing with like words of affirmation for me. Like I love it, but I also don't like need it to run on, right?
Mm-hmm.
um so just understanding that and like being able to tell your partner about it or whatever, cuz like I said, I do enjoy those things. It's just not my like, oh, I need this on a
Mm-hmm.
very regular occasion type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing goes for you. Like you don't necessarily love gifts, but if I give you a gift, you're going to enjoy it.
For sure. Yeah.
So I think your other like lower one would probably be just, I don't even know what, probably quality time.
I would say that my other lowest one be gift giving. I don't know. It might just be that one actually. Now that I think about it, that's a good question.
I mean, I know you enjoy quality time, but I feel like physical touch,
Yeah.
acts of service, and words of affirmation are pretty high for you. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's where I would say, yeah, I mean the quality time and the physical or the gift giving is definitely at the bottom.
yeah.
Probably quality time right above that, which I do enjoy quality time, right? But to me, I'm like, if I don't see you all day and we get 5 minutes, you give me a back rub and a head scratch, like, pretty content with that.
Yes.
Blowjob every once in a while is cool too, but yeah. Anyways, yeah, we it's one of those things that I would say though that then there again, I think it's important for me to reaffirm though is like the acts of service was never like a big one for me, right? That's something that I learned because I can see it's your way of showing appreciation, right? And when I learned that about you, I was able to reprogram my brain to actually receive that from you, right? And so I think that's really important for people to really understand and to really drive that point home, that it's about understanding this and then changing your internal conversation like we always talk about, right? Because once you do address that, you do adjust that, then you start receiving things in a different manner, and you can actually program yourself to, raise the things that your partner commonly does higher on your list.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm very distracted by this Black Hawk out the window.
I can tell.
Yeah. Like, why are we flying around at 10:30 at night?
I don't know.
You're interrupting our podcast.
For sure. Anyways.
Not even sure they can hear that in the background, but it was very distracting to me. Anyways.
Well, on that note, I think that would be a good place to, turn it over to them. And the challenge for this, next few days is going to be to learn the love languages, right? You don't even necessarily have to go read the book. If you haven't, I would encourage you to. But, at the end of the day, just doing a quick Google search.
Yeah.
Right? On the love languages, and you can get
there
a basic.
Used to be like quizzes you could take online too that would tell you what your like main ones are if you really can't figure that out yourself.
Well, I'm sure they're still, still up there. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, just go learn. Think about what brings you the most joy, what makes you feel loved, and then think about the ways that you show affection and love. When you go do the quiz, like you said, that would be a really quick way to figure out, the answers. But to be honest with you, it's not really that hard to understand. Like, okay, when my partner does this, right, I feel loved.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why, and hey, when I do this, I'm showing my partner love, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's just something that's so simple that we navigate and that we deal with on a daily basis, and we just don't think about, the why, right? And so I think that's the best place to go. That is the challenge for the next few days here, is just figure out the way you give and the way you receive, and then try to figure out your partner too.
Yeah.
And then have a discussion, both of you, about it.
Yeah. I think if you pay attention enough, you should know what your partners are.
Yeah, you should know, for sure. And if you don't, maybe this is a cue that you should start paying more attention to your partner.
Yeah. Very true.
All right. On that note, we will talk to you all next time.
We out.
Bye, guys.
Bye.